Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Point Podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. It's trade deadline day here in the NHL. We also just wrapped up the Masters tournament yesterday, so a lot happening in the world of sports. A lot of trades last night. I go to sleep thinking, oh, well, Nick Foligno's going to Toronto. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Then I check my phone before I go to the gym this morning, and you got Taylor Hall going to Boston. You got Braden Coburn going to the Islanders. You got Jeff Carter in a surprise move for me going to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So a lot to dive into today. Going to talk about some golf and hockey primarily on today's show. I'm also going to touch on the NHL really making a big mistake, in my opinion, Saturday night, playing a hockey game that never should have been played. And I'm not talking about COVID rules or anything, public safety, I just think doing the right thing. And I'll get into that in more detail as we go along here. But yeah, just a clear misstep by the NHL and something that I think they should have to wear like the Scarlet Letter for the next couple of weeks, because I just think is ridiculous. But let's start off with the Masters. The tournament started with a leaderboard that was led by Justin Rose after Thursday. He goes 7 under. You had the likes of Mark Leishman, Will Zalatoris at the top of the heap, where you didn't expect to see those guys really beat Hedeki Matsuyama was 3 under after the first day at the top of the tournament. After the second day, Rose shoots even par. He still has a stroke lead, but you see it start to fade away a bit. Then on Saturday for him, he shoots again even par. He stays at 7 under. Doesn't improve, he just played par golf. And Saturday was interesting because we saw Zalatoris kind of rise up a bit. We saw Spieth get better. Xander Schauffele made a late charge on Saturday, eagling the par 5 15th. And what really switched the tournament was a rain delay. Saw a rain delay. It was about 5 o'clock Atlantic time here, and they were off the course for probably an hour and a half. And most guys came back on. They're on the back nine, so they get a finish. And we'll look to our eventual champion in Hedeki Matsuyama, where he came back on the 11th. He goes birdie, birdie, eagle, birdie, birdie to go 6 under in his last 8 holes to just dominate the course. He was playing with Xander Schauffele, and Schauffele eagled 15. So it was funny seeing is Schauffele eagles 15 to tie him with Matsuyama and Rose at 7 under. And then you had literally the next putt, Matsuyama makes an eagle putt to go up by 2 strokes. So Schauffele was just back in it, and then it's 2 strokes behind. And Matsuyama, he was in some trouble on 18, but he scrambles, gets a par. He finishes the day 11 under, and nobody was really even that close to him. And he starts the day, the nearest guys are 7 under par. With Zalatoris and Justin Rose and Schauffele to start the day. And for most of Sunday, what you want for me anyway for golf is Sunday to be at least competitive. And yesterday was not one of the better Masters Sundays, if I'm just being 100% transparent. I think of 2019 when Tiger won. He only won that tournament the last 3 holes. We saw him really birdie 16 where that kind of sealed it, but it was to the bitter end where you had Francisco Molinari, you had Koepka, who were still sniffing the winning the tournament, where yesterday till about 6:45 Atlantic, again an hour left in the telecast of the Masters, it was a foregone conclusion who was going to win. At most of the afternoon, Matsuyama was at 13 under, and Zalatoris, who was the nearest to him, and Schauffele was at 7 under. Now, the tournament did get interesting because from 12 to 15, Schauffele birdied all 4 straight birdies. He had a tough start because he birdied 1, then he went double bogey, and so he was in trouble. But after he birdies 15, and Matsuyama had a bogeyed after putting it in the drink on 15, he's at 12 under. Scheifele's at 10 under, 11 under and 9 under, sorry. They're right, within striking distance. And this was when I was like, okay, maybe we have something here. Schauffele's got 3 holes. He's been on a tear. Matsuyama had dropped 2 strokes. So it looked like we could be interesting here. And then, this is Xander Schauffele in a nutshell. He's a great golfer and he's one of my favorite to watch, but he gets a sniff of the green jacket. And I mean, just a sniff of it. He's on 16. It's a par three. And of course, he puts it in the water. And he ends up triple bogeying that hole, a disaster for him. And that was it. That was it for him. The tournament was over. Matsuyama ended up parring 16, 17, but Schauffele had a chance to make it interesting, and he just choked. He put it on the grass right above the water. It scales down. It's in the drink. Again, triple bogey. What did make it a little interesting, Will Zalatoris. I mean, what can I say about this guy? 24 years old, 6'4". He looks like he weighs about 130 pounds, but yet he can drive the ball like no other. He can put it in the air 345, 350 with ease. Great putter. It was his first time ever playing at the Masters, third career major, and he finished his outright second place at 9 under. Incredible performance by Will. He started the day off great with birdie, then he bogeyed. He had a mixed bag of a day, but he still shot 2 under on a Sunday at the Masters. Not a bad feat. We didn't see many guys post great scores yesterday. The eventual winner, Matsuyama, was 1 over. We saw, John Rahm ended up shooting 6 under, but he had a good day. He ended up, getting tied for 4th, but I think it's easier to shoot better when you really don't think you have a great chance of winning. But so for Will to be in a pressure situation where he comes into the day playing in the third group, he knows that he's within striking distance. The camera's going to be on him the whole day. He didn't shy away from it, and I thought he played great. He'll be back, and this guy has been tearing up the Korn Ferry Tour, which is the AHL, if you will, the equivalent for the PGA Tour. He's been doing it for years, winning big events, and just the confidence he has at such a young age, the way he putts, again, I think the sky's the limit for him. And it's only his third major event, and he's finished in the top 10 in all 3. So really impressive stuff from Will. But he got to 9 under, he birdied 16. So it was at the point of Matsuyama gets to 18, he's at 11 under. So he ends up bogeying the hole. But because he had a 2-stroke lead, it didn't matter. He taps it in. He finishes 10 under par, and he wins his first major of his career. And he was the first Japanese man to ever win a golf major. Humongous accomplishment for him. Definitely was not going into the week one of the preemptive favorites, but had a good. The old saying is you can't win the Masters on the first day, but you can sure lose it. And a lot of guys lost it in the first day. He shot 3 under. He stayed right with Justin Rose. Again, Friday, he didn't play incredible, but he played good enough to stay in the fight. And then Saturday's really where we saw Hedeki step up and really play well. He, again, shoots 6 under on the back 9 and takes a huge lead into Sunday. He needed all of that lead because, like I said, he was at one point at 13 under. He finishes at 10 under, shooting 1 over for the day. So at the end of the day, did he play great down the stretch? No, but he had such a lead that he could fall back on. And, a win's a win. He takes home his first green jacket. And huge for Japan. I mean, to get their first major champion, to get, I even saw on Twitter about how it's great to see at Augusta a non-white person win. And again, that I'm not going to get into the race issue, but it's true. Augusta National, for a long time, women and minorities couldn't play at the golf course, which is as crazy as it seems. For a long, long period of time, it was just white people and white males. So to see somebody break through and win is obviously great. And he's been a really good golfer for a long time. He's one of the 6 players ever to be have the lowest scorecard as an amateur in 2011. So he came in as an amateur, had the lowest score, and now to win the eventual Masters 10 years later. So pretty cool story for Hedeki. Like I said, Sunday, I think watching Saturday with friends, that was definitely the more compelling day when it comes to the moving day, the scorecards, some really good eagle putts. Yesterday, it was a foregone conclusion that Hedeki was going to win. Again, it was briefly entertaining until Schauffele kind of Greg Normand it on 16 with the great white shirt, if you will. But Hideki did what he had to do. He takes home the green jacket, and definitely the course played tough. We saw in November, Dustin Johnson shot a course record 20 under, and I personally like watching them struggle. I want to see. It's not supposed to be easy, and it's 10 under par compared to 20 in November. And it's not just because the time of year. I think they made the course a lot tougher. We saw the greens, some of the slopes you think you're on top of a ridge, it would slide all the way down. So the course played tough, and we saw a lot of guys: Koepka, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, DeChambeau made the cut, but then finished 6 over for the tournament. A lot of guys struggled, and it was Matsuyama, Zalatoris, Schauffele, Jordan Spieth. Again, he finishes tied for third, but after winning last week at the Valero Texas Open, to finish T3 at the Masters a week after winning, that's really impressive. He's getting back into form, and I'm not saying he's going to be the top of the game, but you see guys go through spurts. I think a guy that's really been underreported on for doing that right now is Rory McIlroy. Rory McIlroy is a great major champion, no doubt about it. But so is Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth could have had 2 green jackets. Rory's never won a green jacket. The guy's missing cuts. He's admitted that he's trying to copy DeChambeau for whatever reason. I mean, Rory's got more majors. He's a better golfer than DeChambeau. I don't know why he's trying to copy him. And now he's hitting his dad with golf balls. He's spraying it all over the place. It's a mess for him. So he's another guy to watch. Ricky Fowler. These guys go through spurts where they just don't have it. This doesn't mean that McIlroy can't come out the other side and win, in Hilton Head this next week if he's competing in it. But it's not good right now for him, as Phil Kessel would say. And so just, golf moves on. Like every other sport, we got a tournament in Hilton Head, South Carolina, the RBC Heritage this weekend. But, it's a special tournament. But, on the horizon, you got the NHL playoffs starting in mid-May, NBA playoffs around the same time. We got the PGA Championship next month. So from now until July, you have a golf major every month. Love it. Love it. We got baseball in full swing. Some really compelling stories there. I think it's been a really interesting start to the year. I know I've been more invested in baseball than I have in previous years. I'll go through spurts where I'm tired of it, but we've seen some good games on TV where it's not just the Blue Jays. That's for me one thing that keeps me invested. I'm not a fan of a team, so seeing Phillies Braves play at 2 really interesting teams, I'm going to tune into that. So again, good Masters. I wouldn't call it one of the greatest tournaments ever, but I think a great winner. And like I said, it's good to see, not one of the big boys win it, because it keeps, the lower names in the fight. And it keeps everybody on their toes, looking forward to what's going to happen at the US, the PGA, and the other big tournaments throughout the year. So congratulations to Hedeki Matsuyama on a great tournament and ultimately winning his first major championship. Pivoting to the NHL. We saw games all weekend, but the big theme today obviously is the NHL trade deadline. 4 p.m. Atlantic, there will be no more trades. Rosters will be set, and teams will know what they have going into the playoffs and what the rosters will look like. And for the team of the weekend for me is, of course, people don't talk about them enough, so now they're really going to talk about them. We got to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's they start Friday acquiring Riley Nash, who's a 13th forward, 4th line center. He's on long-term IR. He's got a broken finger. He's got a knee sprain. So they get him for a conditional 7th round pick. I think he can play in the playoffs. He's beaten Toronto twice in playoff series, so they know him well. In Boston, he was a really efficient player for them. Since signing a bigger ticket, he's had some injury problems, a little inconsistency. He's not going to score any goals for you. He's going to kill penalties. He's going to check like a fourth line center. So don't expect big things from Riley Nash. However, I do think he could be inserted in the lineup in replace of Pierre Engvall. That would not surprise me. He's got playoff experience. I think he's as good a player as Pierre Engvall, bar none. I mean, Pierre Engvall, I look at Pierre Engvall, Ilya Mikheyev, they're one of the same. They both have no hands. I like Mikheyev better because he's faster, but I mean, both of them couldn't hit an ocean if they're on a bridge and they had to jump off it, they wouldn't hit water, either one of them. Just kind of a dark reference, but that's what I'm using today. So I think Riley Nash could be a guy you plug and play. Do I think he's there game one of the playoffs if he's healthy? Maybe not, because he's never played with the team, but he's an option. If you lose, we see in the playoffs all the time, a team loses a game, they check out the fourth line center for whatever reason because they think that sparks the team. So we could see him take that. Then last night, we get to the bigger deal of the three that they made over the weekend. And that would be Nick Foligno, the captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets, being traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They used San Jose as an intermediary to kind of retain salary. So Toronto gets Foligno for basically nothing. But when it comes to salary, they did trade a first round pick and a fourth round pick this year and next year. San Jose gets this year's fourth for Foligno. Before I get into what Foligno where I see him fitting on this team, I saw on Twitter that people were really upset with what they were giving up to get him. What Toronto gave up is what you give up at the trade deadline. This Leafs fans program this. You're going for it. This is what it means. That first round pick, if you win the Stanley Cup, which I don't think they will, but I'm not saying they're not either. They're definitely, I think they're in the top five of probably the betting odds right now as the best teams in hockey. And again, that's me talking, the apparent Leaf hater. This is what you give up. If you win the Cup, what's the 32nd pick in the first round? Some player you've never heard of anyway that you'll probably hate because he's a Russian. You should have took a defenseman, Dad. It doesn't matter. And what's a fourth round pick in 2022? Some guy you'll never know. And look at the Leafs history of drafting players lately. How's Rasmus Sandin been? How's Timothy Liljegren been? I take my chances on a known commodity, a captain, a leader, a winner, a guy who beat you last year. So trading a first round pick that's so irrelevant because if you win the Cup, who gives a fuck? I'll give you two players right now. If I said last year, where does Barclay Goodrow play? A lot of people wouldn't know that. And you know what? You shouldn't, because I'm a hockey nerd. I know that. Blake Coleman, more of a known commodity in New Jersey, 20, 25 goal scorer. But Tampa traded a first-round pick for both players. Guess what? Is Barclay Goodrow a first-round pick? No. A third-line checker. Is Blake Coleman is he first-rounder in his career? Second-line winger, probably. But guess what? They won the Cup. So who cares? That first-round pick, and again, they're going for it again this year. They got them for 2 years. But I'm just using that as an example. The return that Columbus gets is irrelevant if you win. Again, if the first-round pick, if Toronto gets beat by Montreal in an upset, yeah, that stings a little bit. But I still think it's worth the risk because you're trying to win. Again, for years, Toronto was trying to get worse at the trade deadline. And this is different than past deadline moves where you get a Brian Boyle or you get Thomas Plekanec. This is a tangible player that's going to make a difference. Plekanec, plugging him on the fourth line, okay, whatever. Nick Foligno, I look at the Leafs team. So you got Matthews, Marner, Hyman. I would never break that line up. I don't care if Hyman's great in the third line. He's not leaving that line if I'm the head coach, point blank. Then you got the second line of Tavares, Nylander when he's not in protocol, and Alex Sittler, Galchenyuk. Yeah, Galchenyuk's played well. Do I think he can sustain that over a long period of time? Well, he's been on 9 teams in 7 years. That's what I know. Has he played well so far? Yes, but he played well in spurts in Montreal too. So grain of salt, wait and see approach. But he's played well, so more power to him. I look at Foligno playing on the third line. However, I worry that they're going to play him at center. He's not a center. He's a right winger. Keep him at right wing. Do not put a player in a position to fail. They did that last year, putting Nylander at center, trying to load up on that top line, and then they end up scoring no goals. Don't do it. Foligno, right winger, not a center. You can put a center on the wing. That's an easier transition. Not a winger to center. I had to do it playing, rec hockey. I sucked it. I couldn't dig a draw. So don't do it. So I look at the third line right now. Engvall, maybe Spezza, because I think Spezza's been a better player. But if you want a third line checking line, which Keith does, Engvall, Foligno, Mikheyev. That's the line. I think it's solid. It's going to be checking lines. It's a third line in the playoffs that will work. It can go up. It can battle Winnipeg's. Is it as good as Winnipeg's? No, with Lowry, Appleton, Kopp. But you can put it on the ice and say, okay, we're not going to get run the fuck over. Because if Kerfoot was at center and you had, Nick Patan and some other little 5'9" forward, it's over. So that line can go up against it and not be afraid. Keefe should not be afraid of that matchup. So good on Dubas there. Then I look at their fourth line. This is where it gets interesting. Spezza's definitely playing, for sure, 100%. Kerfoot, I can't imagine they take him out of the lineup because he makes $3.5 million and whatever. He does his thing. Now, this is where it can get tricky because where does Joe Thornton fit into the mix? Because Wayne Simmons is better than Joe Thornton. To me, acquiring Nick Foligno means one thing. Joe Thornton has become a depth piece, and he's become a healthy scratch player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. When Nick Foligno is out of protocol, when he's eligible to play, I believe Joe Thornton, they're going to have a tough conversation with him and say, you're going to the press box. And maybe they do that with Kerfoot, but they still have another year on his contract at $3.5 million. I don't see how a team picks him. Seattle's not taking Kerfoot, so you're not getting lucky getting rid of that. So you're going to piss him off for next year. Joe Thornton, I love Jumbo. However, he's got 1 goal in 20 games. He's really been an ineffective player. If you're watching the Leafs night in, night out, this guy isn't doing anything for you. And, the organizations, and I look at the Leafs as a primary one, have a hard time parting with veterans. They brought back Wendell Clark when Wendell Clark was way past his prime. They keep guys too long. They kept Matt Sundin further than they should have. Pavel Kabina. I look at even Gary Roberts, his second tour of duty. Wasn't pretty in Toronto. Cujo, to an extent. So, yes, you signed Joe. And, of course, who doesn't love Joe? I love hearing him do media because he actually gives you something. But it's about winning. And if you're a Leaf fan, if you're a Leaf brass, this is brass tacks. This is the best team in my life. I'm 22 years old, born in 98. This is the best team the Leafs have ever dressed, bar none. But they made the conference final in 2002. I think this team is better. You had the Muskoka Five, and you had, Ponikarovsky and Joe Nieuwendyk, and they had some good players. Don't get me wrong. But you look at Austin Matthews, 31 goals, hat trick Saturday night, playing, I think arguably he's second in the Hart Trophy race behind Connor McDavid this season. He's going to win the Rocket. Pretty great season. Mitch Marner, I think when he's playing great, he's a top 15 player in the world. When I think for him, he has his great nights, and when he's bad, he's bad. He's doing his C-cut circles, turn the puck over, whatever. But 9 times out of 10, I think he plays pretty damn well. So you got him, another guy who you look at it and say, well, this guy's going to have a great career, longevity-wise. You could throw holes into the goaltending, but I look at their decor. Their top four is better than the Caberlet years with Cabina and, ass face, aka Brian McCabe. Is better. Riley and Brody, just solid. Muzzin, Hall, solid. When you look at that top four, there's no flashy toy there. There's no Victor Hedman. There's no Seth Jones, but they're solid. They do the job. They chip in when they can, and you got to appreciate that. So check. And I look, and that's tough, because Joe to sit in the press box would be difficult. I'm sure it would be hard in his pride. But I just think it's the facts of life. And for Joe, you're coming to a Stanley Cup contender, and maybe you were promised something, but things change. DeMar DeRozan was told he was not going to be traded from the Toronto Raptors. A week later, he was in a San Antonio Spurs uniform. Jumbo might have been told you're playing top line. But as you get closer to the playoffs, as you get closer, if you smell something that the Leafs haven't had in a long time, prosperity, you got to dress the best team available. And for me, Joe Thornton's in the press box. And is that an easy decision? No. But dressing an aging veteran because he's been great for 20 years, that makes no sense to me. This is not JV baseball. This is pro sports, and it's about winning. And he'll still get a ring whether he's playing or he's sitting in the press box. And there's injuries in the playoffs and everything too. So I'm not saying he'll never play a playoff game, but if you're in your best case scenario and you got your best team to dress, he's not playing. Point blank. And then Toronto made some more moves. Last night, they went out and acquired Big Game Dave, aka David Riddick, from the Calgary Flames for a 2022 third-round pick. This one kind of took me by surprise because I didn't hear a lot about them wanting to address the goalie situation. Hutchinson, for all the flack and all the hate he gets, he's been really solid this year. He's not in an easy situation. He gets thrown in whenever they say you're going tonight. They've had injuries where Campbell was supposed to start, and they're like, Hutchinson, you got to go 30 minutes for a puck drop. So he's been a really good soldier for the Maple Leafs, but this is a really smart move again by Kyle Dubas. In the event there are problems, I'd rather have too much of a good thing than not enough. It's like going to a party. I'd rather have a 2-4 beer than a 12 because I don't want to run out. So you got Freddie. He's been injured for 3 weeks. Apparently he's doing great. Seen a specialist, yada, yada, yada. Not telling us anything. Okay. I understand that. I wouldn't tell anybody anything either because we don't need to hear it. Let's just be honest. Campbell's won 11 in a row. He's Eddie Belfour back there. Rough game Saturday night, but he's been 9 times out of 10, he's been fantastic this season. But you got Freddie, who's unknown, always injured. You got Jack Campbell, who seems like he can't start, 3 games a week. So if you go into the playoffs with Campbell and Hutchinson, we saw what happened to Colorado last year. It was 6 months ago for Dubas to look in the mirror and say, I can't let this fucking happen. He had Hutchinson, he had Francouz, Grubauer, Hutchinson. That was his depth chart. Grubauer got hurt. Francouz blew his knee out for the playoffs. They had Michael Hutchinson. They lost to Dallas game 7 of the second round. Colorado should never have lost to Dallas. They could have won the cup, but they were stuck with Hutchinson in net. You never want to be put in a position. And is Toronto ever going to have to play David Riddick? They probably hope they never see him on the ice. But I'd rather have David Riddick than Michael Hutchinson. Simple. And another thing, Riddick's got a cap hit. It's not a huge cap hit, but Toronto doesn't have a lot of money. Does this mean Freddie is on long-term injured reserve until the playoffs? Something to consider, because I don't know what they're going to do with the money, because they're going to have to send David Riddick down to the minors. Maybe he goes unclaimed, but I think a team would claim him. So they're going to have to work through that financial gymnastics as well. But, with Riddick, with Freddie, with Jack Campbell, I still think you got a Campbell versus Anderson debate, because as Campbell's won 11 in a row, he's been fantastic, and I think he's your starter right now. But we saw the past couple years, Matt Murray, Marc-Andre Fleury, that was constant. That was a teeter-totter back and forth. We saw Philip Grubauer start the 2018 playoffs as a starter for Washington. They lose the first two games. Holtby grabs the net. He never looks back. I think we've seen Varlamov and Greiss kind of battle through it in Long Island. I could see that very well happening in Toronto, because Campbell's been great, but we know Leaf media, we know Leaf, the way they think. You see a guy have one bad game and it's, bloody murder. Let's get this guy out of here. So we'll see. I like the addition, because I still think they need to do some work today. I'm not saying that Travis Dermott's a terrible player, but I'd rather have a guy that's sitting in the seventh hole. If that's who they acquire, they get a bottom pair defenseman, because I'd rather have insurance. If Dermott, say somebody in the top four gets hurt, and that means Dermott's like going to have to play top 4 minutes. How do you feel about that? I don't feel great. But even if Dermott gets hurt, say he gets his knee and he's out 2 games in game 3 and 4 against Montreal, this is who you're potentially putting in the lineup. And you think about this, and how much confidence do you have in any of these players? Mac Hollowell. Bueller? None, right? None. Martin Marincin. Yeah, I don't even need to ask. None. And if this guy was not a first-round pick, you'd have zero faith in him. So anybody says, oh, this guy's great, give him a shot. Rasmus Sandin has done nothing at the NHL level. He's done about as much as me and you at the NHL level. He's done nothing to prove anything. And the fact that he's not playing in the NHL this year tells me more about him than anything else. He's just not ready. And so acquiring a guy with veteran experience that's played in the playoffs is paramount to me. We saw Mike Riley, Braden Coburn get traded from Ottawa. Coburn to Long Island, and Mike Riley going to Beantown. Those guys are guys that are depth pieces. I think Toronto can dip into that market as well. I've referenced before, Troy Stetcher is a guy that they could potentially look at. He played last year in the playoffs for Vancouver. He's in Detroit right now. Definitely something to look towards. I don't know who the guy's going to be. Montour got traded from Buffalo. He would have been a good fit. I think for Toronto, if they made 2 really good trades so far, if they want to make a really good one, it's going to take a lot to get this player out of Anaheim, because I think they covet him. Josh Manson. Josh Manson of the Anaheim Ducks is a player. That's all I can say. He's a player. Is he going to put up a ton of points? No. But I think of Jake Muzzin, who's kind of an injury-prone defenseman. If he goes down, Manson can jump into that role, play a shutdown pair. He's mean. If you get into the front of that, he's going to give you a cross check. He's going to give you a Schwinnigan handshake, and you're going to feel it. He's not going to let you, in the Monopoly sense, pass go for free. He's going to make you earn it. And I'd rather have him ready, and then Dermott waiting in the wings if you need him. I just think adding additional depth. The Tampa Bay Lightning dressed 9 defensemen last year en route to winning a Stanley Cup. Dallas, who made it to the Cup final, dressed 10. So that tells you there's going to be injuries. It's a long playoff. It's a long grind. And having your options being Mac Hollowell, Martin Marincin, Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren, even if they're playing 5-6 minutes, but again, they're only playing 5-6 minutes, then you got Riley playing 25 and Bob's your uncle. We've seen that before. So all in all, Toronto Maple Leafs have had a great trade deadline so far. Again, I think they need to address, but I look at what their checklist. They got a winger. Don't play him at center. Wing. You got insurance at goaltending. Check. Great. I think Riddick, of all the guys available, James Reimer was not going to come back to Toronto. I think Carolina wants a good haul for him if they do, in fact, trade him. So, and I like the Riddick edition over Colorado's edition of Devin Dubnyk more. So I credit Dubas for getting Riddick, who I deem just better right now at the position. And, Riley Nash is another solid ad. And if they can get a defenseman today, they win the trade deadline. Well, I'll get into a team that could maybe match, but it's kind of by a technicality that this team will beat them. But I'll get into that in a second. But, I give them so far, I need to see them add a defenseman, but I'll give them an A. I'll give them an A plus so they can add even a serviceable defenseman. I don't know how you don't, because they've addressed all their needs. Dubas, to his credit, he had a team full of soft 5'9" forwards. He's changed the outlook of his team. Austin Matthews has improved dramatically in his game. He's going to, again, going for the Hart Trophy. He acquired, a year and a half ago, he acquired Jack Campbell as a really serviceable backup. He's been great in a starter slash rotational starter position this year. So kudos to Kyle Dubas, kudos to the Toronto Maple Leafs with these moves and the way they play. They're definitely in the top 5 of the top Stanley Cup contenders. And if you're an objective person, you haven't been able to say that for a very long time. So kudos to Toronto for going all in and spending to get better and try to win a cup. I'll go to Boston, and they acquire, I mentioned Mike Riley earlier. They also acquired Taylor Hall last night from the Buffalo Sabres for Anders Bjork, who's acquired last trade deadline with Nick Ritchie. Never really worked out in Boston, and a second-round pick. And Taylor Hall, Curtis Lazar go to Boston. I look at Taylor Hall's had a terrible season in Buffalo, and it's really hard to evaluate him because he's looked like he hasn't even been engaged. And that's one problem I have with him is you can not score, but at least look like you want to try, at least hustle, right? And it's effort. And I look at Boston. They have an effort problem this season. They lose 8-1 last night on home ice to Washington. And don't get me wrong, Washington's a great team. Right up there with the Leafs as Stanley Cup contenders. But 8-1, they beat Boston on Tuesday. It was their 5th game in 7 days. Yeah, okay. And they're playing Dan Vladar, and they got Rask out, and Halak's got COVID. But it's just general effort. And I look at guys like Connor Clifton and David Krejci and Jake DeBrusk. I just see a foundation of guys who just don't give you enough effort. And I worry about Taylor Hall jumping into that pool where you have guys that aren't giving you enough effort game in, game out. And then he's coming from a place where it's been a negative place where he's been point blank a lazy player. And on paper, it should work. I assume he'll be on the line with David Krejci. David Krejci, he's been talked about forever. Oh, I need a winger. I need help. Well, he's the highest paid player on the team. You think he'd be able to give you something, but he's been limited. But Taylor Hall gives Krejci a good winger. Likely play with Krejci and maybe Nick Ritchie. Keep the top line, the perfection line together. He should be great. Boston's still kind of in a dogfight to make the playoffs. They lose twice over the weekend to Philly and to Washington last night, but they're up only 4 points to the Islanders and the Rangers. The Rangers are just still staying alive in this playoff hunt, getting a point last night off the Islanders, but they're interesting for sure. This team but I think Taylor Hall will be an interesting experiment. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. I think he'll be motivated to play well in a new situation, wanting to get a bigger contract, wanting to get respect in the market next offseason. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do because I think Hall, if this was New Jersey Hall trading at the trade deadline, of course, but he wasn't great in Arizona. He was not great in Buffalo. You got to hope that he can find some of his past game. And I think what would be the telltale sign for his first game as a Boston Bruin is just effort level. Maybe he'll be so excited to be out of the Buffalo situation. Brandon Montour referenced that on Saturday when he was traded to Florida. He just tweeted, so thankful for a new opportunity. And it is such a bad situation in Buffalo that you want to get the hell out of there. But also you got to show effort night in, night out to want to be there. And I don't think Hall has shown that in a long time. So wait and see approach for sure. But he's definitely an interesting project to see what he brings night in, night out, and what comes of his appearance in Beantown. Now we'll go to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay Lightning, defending Stanley Cup champions. They haven't had Nikita Kucherov, Hart Trophy winner, all year, but yet they're tied for first in their division. They got the top defenseman in the world, likely win the Norris. They got the top goalie in the world, likely to win the Vezina. So things are good. But you look at they got Victor Hedman, they got Ryan McDonough, they got Eric Chernak, they got Mikhail Sergachev on the back end. So they say, you think, well, and there's cash straps. So you're like, okay, well, maybe we'll stand pat here. No, Julien Brisebois says, no, let's improve. So he goes out and he trades for David Savard. And Savard was the biggest defenseman on the market, unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. You knew Columbus, it was offloading pieces. They've traded Foligno, traded Riley Nash. They're tanking for a higher draft pick. And Savard gets to Tampa. They used Detroit as a middleman, like Toronto did with San Jose. So Detroit keeps all his salary. They get a pick in the deal, and Savard ends up in Tampa Bay. And this is just the rich getting richer. I mean, you got Savard, who's played against Tampa a ton. They know him very well. They clearly have scouted him. They like him. Savard is not going to put up a lot of offensive numbers, but when it comes to playoff hockey, this guy is going to bring it. They had a 5 overtime game against Tampa last year. He had 18 blocks in the game. He's going to throw hits. He's going to block shots. He's going to be engaged defensively. And I think that's the biggest thing about him is that he's just a winner. And I look at him and say, this is what you want in a playoff player. You got a team that's full of winners already, and you get a guy who's going to bust through a wall to win. And I love that about David Savard. Again, he was the best player available, and you get him for a first round pick again, but that's what you give up this time of year. It's what you give up this time of year to get great players, and that's what they did. So kudos to Tampa Bay. You look at their team. They get Savard at the deadline. They still got Stamkos healthy. Braden Point is a top 20 player in the world. Sergachev, Chernak, Vasilevsky. And, their biggest ad at the deadline is going to be Nikita Kucherov. And he's a Hart Trophy winner. He's been out here with hip surgery, but he's going to come back at the deadline and play. And who's going to add a Hart Trophy winner at the trade deadline? Nikita Kucherov is going to come back in the playoffs. Is he going to be 100% right away? No. But anybody who roots Tampa, who says Tampa is still not the favorite to win the Cup, is high to me. Toronto got significantly better, of course. Colorado's an elite team. But Tampa has not been beaten. They have not fallen off that pedestal. They are still the favorite. Prognosticators can say Toronto's a favorite because they're the media darlings. Until you beat the man, you're not the man. And Tampa's team has only gotten better since last year. It's going to get better with Kucherov coming back. So I hear this narrative online where Colorado's loaded and you got Toronto, who's, of course, people are going to prop up. Like, pump the brakes. The Tampa Bay Lightning are still the best team in hockey. And until somebody beats them, that's going to stay that way. So for me, the two best trade deadlines so far are Toronto when it comes to just making moves, and then by default, Tampa Bay, because you're getting a Hart Trophy player back. He hasn't played all year. That's an addition in my book. Again, it might be a technicality, but to me, those are the two best trade deadlines so far. You got Toronto, you got Tampa Bay. That's just me. Pittsburgh also made a move, trading for Jeff Carter. This took me by surprise. He's got another year at a little over $5 million. He's on the back end of his career. Won a couple cups in LA, was, a huge part of that 70s line with Tyler Toffoli and Tanner Pearson. But it's an interesting addition. You look at, the new general manager / president. Uh, Ron Hextall, the GM, was the assistant GM in 2012 when the Kings won their first cup. Obviously, Jeff Carter was a key cog in that, so that he knows him well. So he know the person, he'd scout him. They've had good success this year. Colton Sevier, they've had guys step up. Brian Rust is having a career year. Jake Gensel, you still got Crosby. Malkin's out injured right now, but you look at the East Division. Washington, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, they're all playing really good hockey right now. Washington and the Islanders are tied for first, but Pittsburgh's only 2 points behind them. Every team playing 41 games. So I see this as an arms race. We see the Islanders acquire Palmieri and Zajac. Palmieri, I think, was a good ad. He scored his first goal as an Islander last night. Zajac, I think, was just thrown in. He doesn't have much left. They acquire Coburn. But Pittsburgh with Berkey and Hextall, they know their window's closing. If you're going to win, it's going to be now. I see Pittsburgh as still the third wheel when it comes to those three teams. I think Washington and the Islanders are better than Pittsburgh. But you never know. You got Sidney Crosby. You got Tristan Jarry's been a solid goaltender in the past month and change. And you say, well, let's take one last shot here. And Jeff Carter is a guy that's got playoff experience. He's played, in 3 different Stanley Cup finals. So he's been there, done that. And I think this would be a move Crosby would approve of, having a veteran guy that comes in. I could see Carter playing more of a third line role, maybe with a Jared McCann. I look at Pearson and Toffoli early in their careers. I think Carter could help McCann really find his ultimate potential. He was a first-round pick that's bounced around in Florida and Vancouver, but the kid's got a lot of potential, and I think Carter could help him kind of guide him and even become a better player than he is right now. He's had a solid season for the Penguins, but Carter could help him even become a better player as the season progresses. He could also play with Malkin, but he's not really that Hornquist role. I think he's better on the third line. He's not a top 6 forward anymore. But I could see Pittsburgh trying him higher in the lineup just based on, their lack of great forward depth and, his pedigree in the postseason. Not many other moves. We saw John Merrill. He's a depth defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings, get traded to Montreal. But, before the deadline, a lot of heavy lifting already. Teams to watch today. The Winnipeg Jets. They couldn't get Savard. That hurts. That really hurts them. They need 1 or 2 defensemen today. They got Bully out for the year. They got Derek Forbort, who looked like he got nicked the other night, so he might miss some time. They have Josh Morrissey. They have Neil Pionk, but they're thin. Tucker Poolman's a pretty good player, but if Sammy Niku has to come in and play, you're in a tough spot. So I think they need 1 or 2 defensemen, preferably 2, to add to the bottom of the lineup. I think Goligoski likely will be one of them. Other than that, I think you'll see maybe a surprise trade if they can pull something off to get another defenseman. Because like I said, their forwards are good. You don't need to address that. You got Hellebuck, who's one of the top 3 best goaltenders in the world. And you need defenseman depth. So adding to that is imperative. Like you look at teams like Arizona, who might part with a defenseman. St. Louis is a team I thought would be, and they're another really interesting team to me because they went twice over the weekend against Minnesota. They're now in the final playoff spot in the West, but they're a point up on Arizona. But at the same time, for Doug Armstrong, you got to look in the mirror and say, can we beat Colorado in the first round? I don't like those chances. So do you still part with pieces even if you make the playoffs? I mean, they are a team that's had winning pedigree, but they win the cup, they lose in the first round last year. So it's something to consider where, okay, we may make the playoffs, but if we lose in 5 to Colorado, where did that get us? So Mike Hoffman could still be moved. Vince Dunn, I think, could still be moved today, potentially Jaden Schwartz. So St. Louis is a team to watch. I don't think they'll add. I think if anything, they'll subtract. But team to look at for sure at what they do at the deadline and what kind of players are moving in and out of that organization. But interesting nonetheless. And you got I think Ottawa still got some players they may want to part with. Good Branson still in the back end. I could see him being moved. They also have a plethora of goaltenders, so if there's still a goalie ask out there, does James Reimer get traded? Carolina's got a three-headed monster net with Nedeljkovic, Reimer, and Mrazek. Do they move Reimer, who's on an expiring contract, or do they keep him as a security blanket for the playoffs? I could see either happening, but if a team made an aggressive offer for Reimer, maybe they decide to part with him. So still some moving parts. Rickard Rakell still on the market. Alex Alafalo in LA. So we'll see what happens today, but it's trade deadline day. Hopefully we see something because it's always funner when we do. But it's a lot happening in the world of hockey, including the standings changing. We got games, Leafs Habs tonight. We got Sens Jets. So lots happening, and we'll see what happens throughout the divisions. I'm going to touch on this, and this really bothered me Saturday night, and I'm glad McDavid talked about it after the game. Saturday, the Oilers had a day where they remembered the life of Colby Cave. It was memoriam. It was an emotional time for the players. Obviously, he played on the team. He died. Just fluke and a tragic loss where he had some brain bleeding, and he eventually passed away in the hospital. And he was a great player, really loved by the Edmonton Oilers organization. He's played across the NHL, and they had that service for him that day. And then they talked about him before the game. It's a long process, and they scheduled the Oilers to play that night. So this was during the day for the players, and they play that night against Calgary. That game should never have been played. It was a rescheduled game because of Vancouver with COVID issues, and you reschedule it that night when they weren't supposed to play originally. I don't like it. Again, Edmonton was scheduled to have a day off, and then you flip the game because of COVID. But I look at this and I say, this just isn't right. It was a day to remember Colby. It was not a day to play a hockey game. And if you're watching the game, Edmonton had no life. They did not want to play. They had their mind not on the game of hockey. They lose 5-0 to Calgary. It does not tell you anything about Calgary. It tells you more about Edmonton and how they didn't play. Calgary's been terrible for weeks, and they just didn't have it. And I look at what's been transpiring, and I think it clearly tells you that it's not good. And I just think it's called just being present. And I think the NHL missed the beat here. You don't reschedule the game on that day. It's about his family. It's about the players thinking about Colby. It's not about playing a game after you go through all its emotional time. And yeah, that might be an oversensitivity thing, but I just don't think it's the time and place. They were not scheduled to have a game on this day. So it's not like, oh, well, you're supposed to have it anyway. No, they weren't supposed to play. So I just think it's called being present. I think the NHL, this would have been a moment to celebrate Colby, making more emphasis on that. And Connor came out after the game, basically said, I'm not going to make an excuse, but we shouldn't have played today. And I applaud him for doing that because I agree with him. And I just think we focus too much on the game sometime where the individuals matter as well. And I don't think Colby was in this moment. I think he was shunned. And the bigger point of the day was his life, celebrating it. And it made it more about the Battle of Alberta, where there hasn't been much battle in the Canadian division all year in any of these damn games. So who gives a shit? So it's unfortunate. And I just think the NHL could have used this as a really good rallying cry, and they missed an opportunity to do so. So I hate the look for the NHL, and I just hope that they look at this and say, the next time we have something like this, or the next time there's a good PR move for us, we take advantage of it. Because that's what it is. It's a PR move more than anything, but playing a game that night was just not the right thing to do. And I think It's a mistake on the league and something they're going to have to wear for a while now. Like I said, it's trade deadline day. The Masters is wrapping up. We got the NFL draft in a couple weeks. And so that's always fun. April 29th, the NFL draft, going to be covering that for sure. We got, the NBA in full swing. We got the Brooklyn Nets, always fun. We got the Raptors, who are just falling into a pit of despair. The Blue Jays winning big Saturday night, 15-1. Then rain delayed yesterday, but weird start to that division. You got the Yankees, who are 3-5, Blue Jays, who are 4-5. You got the Red Sox, who are 5-4. The Orioles are 4-5. So it's a tight division thus far. You got interesting storylines with Ronald Acuna Jr. over the weekend, getting into a few scoffs with Gene Segura, the second baseman of the Philadelphia Phillies. So baseball's been going well. Jays Yankees kick off a series tonight, 3-game set. And the really big thing for baseball is that they're playing. We've seen a few minor COVID issues, but the bigger problem has been players having trouble rebounding from their vaccines. A lot of players have been getting vaccines have had some problems after getting that second dose. So that's something to watch. But no major huge injuries yet. We've seen George Springer hit the injured reserve for the Blue Jays. And, Fernando Tatis Jr., obviously one of the biggest stars in baseball, is on the injured reserve for San Diego. So he's still being evaluated. A few arms, a few starters. I'm hitting to the injured list, but that's been good. But like I said, we're getting into the full swing of things here. We got draft, we got trade deadline after date. Rosters will be set. You can join me and Craig Eagles tonight at 7:45 on Facebook Live. We're going to talk about the whole trade deadline day, who we see as the real Stanley Cup contenders after all the moves have been made, and go into great detail about what teams have really, what teams are missed out on the deadline, really failed to address their team, and who were sellers that made out really well, because I don't think many will. It's not a great seller's market right now. And getting a first round pick and a prospect this year, that's dead. That's not happening because there's no money, and teams know that, to be honest, the rentals aren't that great. So we'll see what kind of moves get made today, but enjoy the trade deadline. I'll be covering it tonight. I might even go live on Facebook if there's a big signing or a big trade that needs to be discussed. So be on the lookout for everything today when it comes to the trade deadline. But hope you guys all had a great weekend, start to a new week. And just want to shout out to my podcast co-host and great friend, Seamus Fillmore. Happy birthday, Shay. Happy 24th. You're a great co-host. I thank you for doing the pod with me Tuesday nights. It's one of the best times of my week. Everybody just go out there, wish Seamus happy birthday. But Shay, I love you, buddy. And we'll be talking tomorrow night where we do a special podcast where we're going to debate the careers of Will Ferrell and Adam Sandler. So be ready for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to do that. We're going to talk about their best movies, who's been better, who's a better actor, who's had a more profound impact on sports. So a lot of fun. We'll also reveal the next show that we're going to be covering on the pod. So tune into that tomorrow night. But lots more coming on To The Point. Episode 100 around the corner, so that'll be a big celebration. But until then, everybody take care, stay safe, and we'll